Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first
Hello.
episode. So, Chris, what are we doing today?
What's the name of the show?
So, we kind of named it "Manufacturing Marketing: Conveying Your Message." Uh, it was supposed to be a tagline, but now you know what that is. So, like, it's the manufacturing marketing show. I don't know if there's a lot of manufacturing marketing shows there. If they are, I'm gonna fight them for it.
Well, we're about to find out, I
we're
think.
we're gonna bully them off the internet. So, uh, so do you wanna talk about how that we've seen this format uh, already by one person, and we thought it's a good idea that we wanted to experiment with.
Yeah, I think in general, I've seen a number of case studies where it's, not only playing video games, but just doing something while talking about a topic that somebody's passionate about, give give something for people to look at. In our case, we're going to use, this video game called Satisfactory
Yeah,
and, tie it in where we can because my mind can't tie things in or can't not tie things in
yeah,
when I see an opportunity in manufacturing. And so, yeah, I definitely want to go over how the game, plays a role in the background. But yeah, just doing some conversation uh, while having some fun. Um, and we'll see how it goes.
yeah.
It's
I've
going
seen
to
you more
be,
animated. I've seen you like
well,
more
yeah,
more like passionate, like let's LFG kind of vibe.
yeah, it's all right. All right. I'll see what I can do to manufacture that. Like maybe some intro music will be good in the future, something like that.
Well, I don't think you need to manufacture that though. Like I think you've got it. It's just you have to activate it.
Right. I need something to activate it. Right. Like today's topic, what the hell is customer experience? Why am I having to define that in the first place? Like, it's customer experience. Like, thank you, marketers, again for making simple phrases hard to understand. Um, and I have a take, obviously, but I'm going to talk about some industry definitions. Obviously, this isn't didn't get confusing on its own. So why is it confusing and why is it so hard for people to understand? Um, for me, it's simple. Uh, it's what your customers, you know, say about you when you're not in the room. How do you make them feel? Um, and this is all based on basically any interaction, personal or professional, that they have with you and your business. Um, and especially like in industrial spaces, there's a lot of personal interactions that happen. Companies pride themselves on the personal relationships that they have with some of these customers, so it's easy to forget about that stuff, coloring the experience. Usually it's a positive thing, um, done in an unintentional way, but when you try to scale this out and try to grow and you add new people into the mix, you're going to need to understand that that was an important part of where you got, of how you got to where you are, um, and either like switch gears or find ways to make time for it. Um, so the best way to get them saying positive things and having them feel positively about the experience, I think, is just be easy to work with. And every interaction, needs to deliver value, um, at every point in the process. And the experience really starts, you know, at the first engagement, at the website, at the show, um, over LinkedIn, wherever it may be. Every interaction is going to leave a mark, and if you want it to be positive, It needs to be valuable in some way. Um, so for me, I mean, I can make anything more complex than it needs to be, but for this phrase, like why is it so misunderstood um, in the industrial space specifically? But I think in all spaces, it's a hard concept for people to grasp. So I found some definitions, you know, some different definitions, just from various consultants and companies, and I'm going to share them. McKinsey says that CX, or customer experience, refers to everything an organization does to deliver superior experiences, value, and growth for customers. So if I'm, the business owners that I know, they're like, okay, everything an organization does, like what does that mean? Really? Like everything? Like I already have lost trust in this definition. Um, Gartner says CX is the customer's perceptions and related feelings caused by one-off and cumulative effective interactions with the supplier's employees, systems, channels, or products. So this kind of tells you what the everything is, like down to the level of employees, all the systems that you're interacting with, all the new channels, not just shows anymore, not just individual meetings. It's social, it's communities, um, the entire digital space, um, and it's still the products you're providing too, right? So and bringing this up and coming to grips with it, like you might understand what everything is now, but now it seems like a ton, and it is. And the knee-jerk reactions, I think, like we can't boil the ocean, right? So let's talk about this later. We don't feel a problem right now, so we're going to just deal with this later.
So
um,
let me ask you this:
sure.
to the people that ask you or tell you, to, we don't want to boil the ocean. What is the thing that should let them change their mind and be like, no, this is for right now? Because obviously they're not seeing what a bad modern customer experience is causing. So what is the thing that we need to peek under the hood for and see, oh, this is wrong and this is costing us money. We need to get on this right now before it gets catastrophic.
I think talking to both your frontline employees, the customer facing teams, and the customers themselves are what uncover the problems. It's very hard to see this in the bottom line, especially when business is going well. But when you talk to the people, and you say you can't boil the ocean, but the water temperature is rising, and the customers on both sides, you know the customers that you've been doing business with for years, they have more pressure on them to meet project deadlines, always have information ready for their bosses to um, back up the decisions they've been making. you know and internally, the customers are, the employees serving them, they're getting bombarded now. It's not just phone calls and emails anymore. It's social posts, it's um, you know website forms, and it can be all of these things in the same conversation, because customers, they bring this is how they bring their personal lives into their business lives. Like they're used to having all these different channels to talk to people, um, and that's coming into your team, whether you want it to be or not. So in that case, your team is like frogs, and they're in it every day, right? So it feels different and it's difficult, but they don't necessarily know why. They just know they're getting more calls about uh, not necessarily new stuff, but you got to stay on the phone longer, and you know, you wish that they just read the email that you just sent them, you spend time on, right? But you can't control how these people are looking for help. So they're just going to hit you. And that's where it's the water temperature is rising. And if you don't deal with it, you don't have to worry about boiling the ocean because it's boiling
You.
anyways,
Yeah,
right?
it's
In your
boiling you.
people, right? So, and that's happening. And that's what I'm going to refer to as the modern customer experience, the modern buying experience. Like, sorry, but Amazon, Netflix, Uber has ruined it, for the rest of us. They've set very high expectations, and people bring those personal expectations into business, right? And that's where there's often a disconnect between leadership table and the frontline employees that have been taking care of the customers forever. But when you see these calls types that go up, like the volumes just start increasing and you don't keep up. And yeah, business is great, revenue's crushing it, but your people are getting crushed. And that revenue is only going to last as long as those people do. So choosing not to, boil the ocean is to watch your people boil instead. Um, and so those definitions, I think, can make it clear, but here's where it starts to get muddy. And like, you know, since we are in that time where you can get information, in so many places, HubSpot definition says customer experience is the impression your customers have of your brand as a whole throughout all aspects of the buyer's journey. It results in their view of your brand and impacts factors related to your bottom line, including revenue. You know, People always look at HubSpot as like the marketing, sometimes the email marketing tool, but most of the times they're explaining stuff, it always comes back to revenue. Like you're not doing anything if you're not creating revenue and the bottom line is, positive, right? So now we look at that and it's still a complex definition that talks about, buyer's journey in all aspects and, you know, but now it's like, okay, it's like bottom line, including revenue. Okay, that's under control. Our bottom line is doing great. We don't get negative feedback. I guess we're doing all right. Our CX, must be in good shape. And then you have Zendesk that breaks it down in simple terms, and it's like CX is the relationship between a company and its customers. Okay, cool. We're good. We have great relationships with our customers. They've been with us for a long time. Nothing to see here. Everyone back to work. So if you are an owner or an executive wondering about this term and you just, see these definitions, it's very easy to say, oh, I'm good. Or at least not have any idea what you're supposed to do next. And the people who suffer are the customers, are the people on the front line serving those customers. And since nobody's addressing it effectively, the customers are settling most of the time, right? They don't have an optimal experience to choose. Um, so in those cases, the market stays the same, the market share stays the same, the leader stays on top, nobody gets fired for buying IBM, et cetera, et cetera. And there's no change. But really, every company I've been in and around, it's clear that the first person in that space that takes that step forward is just going to crush, right? Because once you're out there, it's a lot of work, right? It's a lot of work to intentionally build this, but there's a reason that it's the differentiation, model now. It's the goal. And if you can differentiate based on experience, it's something that people can't copy. Like, products can be copied. Um, you know, it's easy to say quality. It's easy to say reliable. It's easy to say, responsive. But actually doing it and having that experience that supports that is not something easily, copied. So you can start boiling yourself, or you can let your people get boiled. You know, it's up to you.
What I'm hearing from all these like uh, scattered definitions is nobody's talking about what is hurting these leaders in their daily life to get them to do some actions. And I feel every kind of leader and stakeholder in a company has a different thing that's bothering them in their day to day, and there's a different thing that they're trying to optimize for. So can we somehow talk to them in the way they want to listen?
I mean, that would be nice. I think the tough part is that since it's such foreign territory and all these new things are happening around us, they just create these fires, these little fires everywhere. So every day is just full of firefighting, right? You don't have time to think about how do we prevent the fires. You just you just want to fix the problem because that's what you've done. Like that's how you built the business. It's the reactive, execution that most businesses have, and that's worked for them. But when and for some businesses, when they're not asked to grow or they accept growth like 5 to 10%, they don't need to change much, right? But the ones that have been doing it this way for a long time, you know, and now all of a sudden they want to grow because they see opportunity, or they just got bought by somebody and now they got to like double in 5 years. That's a much different approach, and it requires a culture change, digital transformation. Just a growth mindset is much different from a slow and steady wins the race mindset, and it's not for everybody. um, that was something I learned early, where it's like I get excited about growth and not everyone does. Not everybody
Okay.
wants to kick it out the park, right? um, and some organizations make it actively very difficult to take to even put like moonshots on the table, to swing for the fences. Like there's actually no incentive. There's only risk to yourself. And it's hard when that's how the organization is set up. But then you have leaders saying, "Oh, we want to grow by this much," right? Going from 50 to 100 million, or 500 million to a billion. Those it's much different from 10% a year, right? So, um, some
I
people
wanted
get
to highlight.
excited.
I wanted to highlight. You had some interesting content about this specifically on LinkedIn, and if anyone watching this is catching this off of LinkedIn, make sure to follow us. Our handles are uh, right below our images. Check out our content, especially Chris's content. And you talked in that post about developing clearer ways to define this customer experience for these different types of leaders. Uh, so, could you shine more light on that?
Yeah, yeah. Um, Thank you for that reminder. Um, and this is the challenge in itself, right? Because it is everything. It does impact all parts of the organization. And with any initiative like this, you got all these different stakeholders that all care about different things. This is why the alignment, is so important. Like, yes, everybody has different initiatives, but you've got to find a way as an organization to put things in place that somehow serve, the greatest number of people so that it has the maximum impact. So if we're talking to the C-suite, like I said, this is a differentiator. This can be this should be, and I don't think anybody out there is, um, this can help any business if they choose this as a strategic differentiator, right? The customer experience, because it builds customer loyalty, grows lifetime value, and it enables, premium pricing. Like, it stops you from racing to the bottom. Like, this is how you sell value. Like, this is here's the product, here's everything you get around it, soft services, the experience that we give you. right? And that stuff directly leads to revenue and profits. If you're a sales leader, these experience that are generated, it increases the speed of closing deals, right? You don't have to accept 2 years sales cycles because you're moving roadblocks. You're educating them much earlier in the journey. You're making it easier to get the quote, to accept the quote, to send in the PO, um, to receive value after you bought it, so that when you're one guy, as the pilot program for a huge company, and the faster all this stuff happens, now the other 49 out of 50 locations are buying, right? And that sales process is much easier because they're already bought in. The marketing leader loves that differentiation strategy because it's about long-term value, and you're never going to compete on product features and price. That's so hard to do. And nobody likes doing it. It's not fun, right? So having that experience to tout, you know, is what the marketing leader is going to care about. If we're talking field service, CX provides your technicians with the knowledge and the digital tools, to resolve customer issues in one visit. Oftentimes using a knowledge base, type tool, something that you can give them before you even get there, or it's something that the field service guy can pull up, as he's on site, so that he doesn't have to have everything in his head. He doesn't have to go, on his laptop and find all the different files for all the different situations. Just a much better experience for both people on that side. For operations, it gives you a proactive ability to identify things faster and see where the process pain points are, before they become chronic problems. Because once they're chronic, they cost way more, and it's a heavy investment, and it's downtime, and it's all that stuff you're risking by not being proactive about this. And the current systems that are in place, you really can't be proactive. Like, there's no way. The only way you can identify it is once it becomes a problem. uh, and then customer support, maybe this is tech support, people on the ground at home base that are generally communicating with customers, making sure they got orders and they're happy. um, this is about getting ahead of that by listening, by understanding needs, and continue and taking that information and continuously improving how we serve the customers, right? This guy called in this week. I thought we had a good conversation with him and had his problem solved. Now he's calling again next week. Like, why is that happening? Right? If we're not recording it or recording it on pieces of paper, you can't, there's no way you're getting ahead of problems. So, really, as we talk about it, framing it in terms of the priorities and objectives for each role, but also finding a way that, let's say a customer portal, for example, like, here's all the ways it serves each person. So we're not building 6 different initiatives. We've got to find a way to say, hey, this is, 1 or 2 initiatives, and this is how it serves everybody.
That was a good, really in-depth explanation, and I have to say, it is very easy for people like me, especially people who've been on the other side. I've been an engineer. I've been an applications engineer. I've been talking with customers, and anything that makes our life easier to give the customers what they need at the right time in the right place feels like a no-brainer for me. And sometimes I wonder why it's such a hard sell.
Yeah, that's why it's tough for me too. Like, and I think it comes down to just being proactive, trying to develop that kind of muscle in these organizations that haven't been proactive is hard. But once you see, like, because it's really as simple as these questions. Like, so let's say we're talking to the stakeholders, and these are very obvious questions with obvious answers, but if you can put it in this context, like if I'm the CEO, do I need strategic differentiation from my competitors? Yeah, that's probably a good thing. If I'm in sales, do I want higher win rates and less deals that stalls? Maybe even being less at the mercy of a project specification. Yep. If I'm in marketing, do I want to compete on value instead of price? Hell yeah, I do. Field service. Do I want to do less visits? Do I want to handle it, in one shot? Maybe I don't even have to go out there. Of course. Operations, process improvement. This is something that organizations are generally good at when it comes to production and manufacturing. You have lean methodologies, right? And they're very proactive about that stuff. But kind of as you get outside of that group, it just falls away. And those principles go away, and there's waste everywhere. So this allows you to be proactive, you know, while engaging with all these other different stakeholders as they start to engage with you. And then support, like, can I understand the customer needs better? Like, of course I can. Like, is that helpful? Yes, it is. So really just that's the challenge, right? Is like, can we simplify this in a way that's impactful and sees action?
Not to cut you off, but do you have a chainsaw here? We can get rid of this tree for us.
All right, one sec.
So this is a good opportunity for us to talk about Satisfactory, the game. This is a game that's near to my heart. As someone who's been an industrial engineer, this is a game that is mainly focused on creating factories, optimizing them, and managing power to them. And it scratches like a specific itch in my brain that I used to have when I was doing engineering work. And I always found it to be an easy way to, zone out, do my little calculations and, spreadsheets. Everybody enjoys working in spreadsheets while in video games. So yeah, we thought it would be a nice background for these kinds of conversations.
Such an engineer. Spreadsheets. This will be the first game where I've probably utilized the spreadsheet to play the game.
It's funny we're talking about spreadsheets because today I had the epiphany of I think a lot of organizations would be better off if they did not give access to Excel to everyone in the organization. Some people need to stay out of Excel.
That's a bold statement.
Yeah. Some people need to stay out of Excel and look at the dashboards the way the business analysts have presented them. Or look at, the portal and the analytics it's giving you. Because I am sure there's a lot of really smart people that put in time and effort to make sure the right data is being visualized in the right way.
There we go.
Yeah.
Got it.
So I kind of took the lead on starting this, coal power project to get you off, get you running.
Awesome.
So when coming back to what is the modern customer experience? When you say that expression, the modern customer experience, can you talk about the reactions you get from the people who understand what it is, people who have never heard of it, and the people who have the wrong idea of what it is?
Hmm.
I'll give you the option to start with whichever you want.
I think for those that understand it, it's just like overwhelming. They haven't ever had to worry about it from that perspective. So it does feel like boiling the ocean, right? It's an easy fallback to say it's too much for me. Like I can't even fathom it. And that's why, it can be challenging for organizations outside of using recruiters to get outside help for these new concepts, which is really what's needed. Like if you've never done anything before as an organization, you don't know how to do it, you've never been trained on it, nobody in the organization has a degree in it. Like what other role would you try to do it yourself? Like it makes no sense. So you bring in outside help or hire, somebody with the knowledge because they do have, believe it or not, they do have experience design um, degrees coming out of university now. Um, but there's other companies, and this is where hiring outside of the space can help, um, which is often very hard to do in some industrial spaces. Not everybody you hire needs experience in that space, but that's a different topic. Um, so yeah, it's just overwhelming for those that understand it. Um, for those that think they know what it is, and it's about the relationship. It is ultimately about the relationship you have with the customer, right? But now it's about, like, if you want to grow, how do you scale it? How do you do that with more people, right? In the very, you know, personalized, intensive ways that you've done it in the past, by wanting to shake everybody's hand. You can't shake everybody's hand anymore.
Yep.
Um, so it's easy to say, oh, I know what that is. I know what a good relationship looks like. But then you're missing the website, the social media, the LinkedIn, all the different ways that this person is now interacting with you. And you can't say I don't have to worry about that because it's happening. And you could have all the trust in the world, but you know, when you have an aggressive marketing team, posting and pissing off, somebody who's trusted you for a long time, that can create shockwaves. And,
It sure
you know,
can.
it's something to be managed. Like you can't not manage it. And then the third thing, for those who don't know, it's kind of an added thing on the heap of things they don't know. And again, it comes back to I've been doing it this way for years. Business is good. I don't need to learn another topic, like revenue operations or demand generation or sales enablement, like all these things. Like we're doing just fine. Like sure, it's out there. I'm hearing about customer experience, but it's not something I need to worry about because the bottom line's good and we're doing all right. I think most of these scenarios, it's we're doing better than we actually are, right? And again, the burden hits the front lines, and that's why it ties back to the culture. That's why it talks back to, or it comes back to, the transparency required, the systems of data that are needed to let things flow. Like you can't be walking around to ask everybody questions or hand them pieces of paper. It's just not that simple anymore, and it's never going to be. So you got to find a way to understand the situation first. Make the decision to say, okay, we need to change. Ultimately, that's where it starts. Like you don't have to figure out everything up front to make the decision. Okay, we're not aligned we're not able to, these customers that we've been able, these loyal customers that we've been able to serve for years, they're asking for things like, I want to know the status of my order without calling you, just like I can on Amazon. I
Yep.
buy something on Amazon, I get the confirmation, I know exactly when it's going to ship. If it doesn't ship, I get a notification immediately and it gives me an adjusted timeline. Or it doesn't, sometimes it gives you the buffer, just tells you it's delayed, but it's always keeping me in the loop. It's very rare that I'm surprised at any point when I make a transaction with Amazon. And that's the key to all of this. Like, can't ever surprise your customers. Like, because I've heard stories of, oh well, they got it a week early, so why should they be mad? Like, they should be happy about that. It's like, not when the person running the dock has to schedule every delivery
Cannot receive it yet.
and then they
Like
get it
one
a
week
week
early.
early. Like, anything unexpected is much more likely, especially when it's unintentionally planned, right? There's definitely ways to create good surprises, you know, and, exceed expectations. But almost always it has to be intentional if you want it to be a positive result. When you surprise them without meaning to, it's almost always bad. And yeah, it's not easy. Like I said, it's not easy, but once you understand it, you can work towards it. And that's what it takes. That's the first step. Understanding where you're at. Are we able to meet customer expectations like we've always been able to? And this is where the product becomes more than just the hard good, it becomes the experience. Because when they say, yes, I bought this thing, but now I want to know this and this and this, and I don't want to have to call you to get it, that's a request that's included in the purchase. And they shouldn't have to ask you for proof of delivery, for a tracking number, all these things that they're used to getting without thinking about it, right? And that's a part of the request, and you're not meeting that request anymore. And if you can understand that, then it's like, okay, how do we meet this request, right? Let's take action.
What do you say to people who quote Henry Ford that says, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses?
Mm.
Customer doesn't know what they want. We know better. We're the experts. Isn't that the old adage, even with B2C, like direct to consumer? We know better. We are selling you an experience you never knew you wanted. Could be the experience of, bad operations and like delayed orders and bad documentation, but it's still an experience they didn't know they wanted. Sorry, being
I
facetious here.
No, I can see that if you're doing like market research, I think that applies. But when I think it's different for the customers that are actively telling you what they want and what they don't want, right? And how you in your life, like, this is what's mind blowing, right? Like, even marketers, they're some of the worst at it. You know, how you can say like, "Oh, I don't answer all these calls. I don't like getting all these emails," and then we send those emails, and cold calling happens, and like somehow it's gonna work. That's where it's like, oh, I'm a business owner and I buy from Amazon all the time. And when I bought it and it's supposed to show up on Friday and I'm ready to receive it, and then Amazon tells me it's coming on Monday or Saturday, I'm upset.
Sure am.
So why can I do that to my customers? Like, it's the same expectation across the board. And like, that's where it's, again, it doesn't matter what industry, it's about the human experience. Humans, this is how they buy, this is how they want to experience doing business with you. So at the very minimum, and it's going to look different the execution of it will look different in every business, but the delivery has to be the same. As I'm going through the journey, I can't be surprised. Expectations should be clear on both sides, and you should be meeting those expectations. Like that's a table stakes. And in B2C, it's definitely table stakes. What's interesting in B2B and industrial spaces is like we kind of haven't gotten the table past this table stakes of like a product, like high quality product. Like those are the table stakes right now, and nobody's kind of raised the bar to the next level of okay, these are the buyer expectations that we should be meeting. And it's hard. Like it's hard work. That's why, ultimately at the end of the day, it's hard work to do it, and it's hard work to do it right. Because you can spend a lot of money and spend a lot of time to create situations that customers weren't asking for. Um,
Me and you were both part of this interesting community of marketers for industrial, and there was an interesting conversation that happened there. And one of the marketers brought up specific data about the modern buyer experience, and an interesting conversation ensued after that. The data talks about how, and let me read this. It takes 31 touches to convert a B2B buyer from awareness to purchase. 84% of B2B buyers use social media profiles to make a purchase. A B2B buyer consumed 11.4 pieces of content before the purchase. 6.5 number of people buying committee influence a B2B purchase. So B2B must build self-serving channels. And the conversation that got generated was we do not have data to support this in the industrial space. And my take was, well, it kind of feels like the chicken and the egg, because there's no industrial organization, to my knowledge, that has signed up to go all in on a self-serving marketing strategy to get that data. And without that data, some marketers struggle to sell this to leadership to get buy-in to do such a thing. So like, it feels like a cycle that we cannot break. I wonder what your take is.
yeah, it's definitely a part of the problem. And ultimately, when this is coming from, something interesting that was said was, uh, the person that brought this up, he's like, the attitude I get from sales and leadership still harkens to the old days. That none of the decision makers are on any social or using web content to make decisions. It's more accepted, um, that their people aren't on LinkedIn and they're not looking for this stuff. And again, that's why you listen to customers and buyers and not sales and leadership. Because the B2B buyer, at the end of the day, is human. And this is how humans buy. And your sales and leadership people, everybody in your organization, buy like this when they use Amazon, when they use Netflix, even in the stores, they go to in person now, has ways to like, pull pricing from various places online and like show it to the, cashier, your price matching. Like the whole thing has changed. And that's why you listen to customers and buyers and you have to talk to them and you believe them. And, you know, because of this, if there were any statistically different data, and niching down to an industrial market, let's say, how credible could it be? Like knowing that these companies have not digitally transformed, have not created self-service experience, because most of these companies, like you said, a B2B buyer consumed 11.4 pieces of content before the purchase. right? Most industrial companies don't even have like 5 pieces of content worth consuming.
Let alone 11.
Right. So if you try to do this research at that level, of course they're not consuming as much content. That doesn't mean they don't want to.
Yeah.
It's not available, right? That's why Google results and SEO is still a blue ocean, for most companies because nobody's making content.
Any closing thoughts on the modern buyer experience in the industrial space?
Just have some self awareness. Like, just take a second to think about how you like to buy and how you like to be served as a customer. This can be the $5 purchase to purchasing your car, to purchasing your house, to, you know, dealing with the vendor who is, adding on to your business. Um, it's just the same experience that you expect is the experience that your customers are expecting. And take a second to evaluate, are they getting that experience? If not, why not? Can we do something about it? Should we do something about it? Most likely the answer is yes. And then start educating, you know. But just
Become the
start
number
with,
one resource.
yeah, start with the awareness of that you might not be perfect as a provider of goods and services. How can you get better?
I think you asking for self-awareness is a very controversial statement for marketers.
Could be.
Anyway,
one of the number
moving
one
into yeah,
one of the
go ahead.
number one qualities that we should be training and teaching, for any human being nowadays, in my opinion. Self-awareness.
So, switching on to something more, topical these days. I have the segment where I like to highlight stuff that's happening in the news, preferably for B2B industrial, but there are some things happening in the news that can have some takeaways, especially the conversation around Twitter is dead, long live X. We've witnessed in the last couple of months 17 years of brand equity squandered. A rebrand that happened overnight to a brand that kind of has some bad connotations around similar branding on the internet.
X.
X. So before I dive in, do you have any general thoughts? And we're talking about the rebrand itself, not the general, case of Elon Musk taking over Twitter. The rebrand itself happened in such a quick and visibly haphazard way that it gives me pause and I want to dig deeper into it.
I mean, I'll just say that no one should be surprised at this point on anything. You should be surprised if you're not surprised, I think, by anything that happens under his watch over there. So, yeah.
So, I have some talking points here. So there's a thread from the newly appointed CEO talking about how X is the future of unlimited interactivity, centered in audio, video, messaging, payments, banking, creating a global marketplace for ideas, goods, services, and opportunities. Powered by AI, X will connect us all in ways we're just beginning to imagine. And all I can think of is Twitter was the town square of the internet. Juxtapose these two ideas, these two messages of Twitter was the town square of the internet, and whatever that statement was. It just feels like non-cohesive amalgamation of buzzwords. To add on top of that, the new logo. I'm sure most of you people who have a phone and had Twitter installed have seen the new logo. The bird is dead. After 17 years, the bird is dead. Is replaced by X. And the logo is the Unicode character X, as is. No changes. There was no graphic design involved. In fact, if you were following the developing story, it kind of looked like some random X user, just suggested it, and Elon said, "Brilliant, let's adopt it." People are now manually going into their phones and adding custom shortcuts to roll back this change. They download the old Twitter logo and they rename the shortcut to open this app because nobody wants to have a black icon with a white X on their phone because that suggests some unsavory things. Twitter had two definitions in the Merriam-Webster. Like how much brand equity more do you want? Like the
really?
word yes. And wow. I would love to read the definition. Tweet. The first one is to make a chirp, of course, birds. But second one is to make a posting on the Twitter online messaging service. To post a tweet. I would love a Merriam-Webster dictionary definition for my brand.
It's definitely the definition of branding.
Yeah.
Like Googling, right?
Yes, exactly. And the Twitter bird itself is featured on countless product packagings all around the world. And if you notice, a lot of these packaging even have the even older Twitter logo. Like, it's such a logistical nightmare to go around and change your packaging and recall existing packaging that's in the market. Doing an overnight rebrand and forcing every single company on earth that decided to not just go all in on Twitter, but put their Twitter handle on their packaging now has to go and change it. Are they gonna? In fact, there's a lot of people that were talking about worries about brand confusion with X videos because there's Twitter videos. Huh. And all those ramifications. In fact, Twitter was momentarily blocked in Indonesia after the main switch triggered adult and gambling site filters. And it's just the whole piece feels like there was no planning to it. But people who know Elon Musk know that this is not the first time he tried to make X.com a thing, which is his early venture in the online banking that got bought and merged into what we know as PayPal. And when he tried to enforce this branding change to PayPal, into X, he got voted out of PayPal. So right now, he's trying to remove the sign for Twitter. In fact, he got a foul with the local authorities because he didn't get a permit to remove the sign so quickly, yet he did it anyway. He quickly erected a big strobing flashing X on the top of the website, not the website, on top of the building. And it created issues with residents because now people have a big shining X in front of their windows, which right now he got forced to remove, so the sign is down. But if you go into the website and dig through the UI, tweet is gone, now it's post. Retweet is gone, now it's called repost. And quote post. So all that brand equity is gone. But if you dig into the UI, you will still find some remnants of the word tweet. but they're working on scrubbing all of that. So before I give my take, as far as branding goes and having that much brand equity, why would one just throw it away? Why would you do such a destructive move of throwing 17 years of brand equity out the window for a new platform that is, which sounds like going to be a Western version of WeChat, the everything app that is known in China, which has social media, messaging, government ID, payments, uh, basically any online service you need, WeChat has. And this seems to be the vision that Elon is building. And I personally do not think there's product market fit for the Western market.
Well, it's really any service you need available online in the same place, is what he's going for.
Yes, that is the vision.
And I think at the end of the day, he's obviously been bent on this X idea. And it was kind of like, this is happening. I'm not going to worry about any consequences at all. And, you know, I'm guessing there's people advising against it. Like, but at the end of the day, whatever they're putting in front of them, like brand equity, brand value, whatever they put in front of him was not more valuable than the vision that he has. And he probably, you know, the way he looks at these things, he's going to be able to overcome any consequences in his mind. So he's not caring about, you know, he's going to create his own branding in the Webster Dictionary. Probably how he's viewing the situation.
I
But
feel
think
he's going to get a Guinness World Record for fastest devaluation of a company.
It could be. Even then, like, he probably doesn't care. Like, this is the stepping stone to what he's always envisioned. And yeah, it's going to be, I can't say I'll be watching, but I'm sure there'll be plenty more, you know, interesting lessons that can be learned as this progresses forward.
So speaking of lessons, I had some questions for companies in the B2B space, especially the industrial. I know this is a bit far removed, big SaaS product, B2C sells ads versus the industrial space, who I'm sure the brand equity that they have, even if it's a 20-year-old brand or a 50-year-old brand, the brand equity itself is not that extensive. So I have some questions for the companies that do have established brands. Do you know what your brand is? Because I don't think Elon understood that. Do you have a documentation that defines what that brand is? I don't think Elon saw any documentation or wanted to look at it. Do you know what this brand is worth? And do you have mechanisms to judge if this brand is resonating with the right target audience? And I do feel those are 4 questions that nobody thinks to ask. Because anytime you hear about a website update or a messaging update or a logo update, I don't think these questions are being asked. I think it's more like Elon. We want the future brand. We want the X. We don't care what Twitter is. I'm interested in hearing your thoughts about this.
Yeah. Again, it's about being proactive and understanding all this. at a true like market value level. I think most companies have no idea, um, especially in industrial spaces, like what brand equity looks like. Again, they haven't had to worry about this, so it's not like crazy that they don't know about it. But it's easy to misstep when you bring in when you bring in two companies together, or when you're you know when you get acquired, and there's a question about you know should we take the mother company's brand or should we stick with our brand, and that is a question of, well, do people know this brand? Like, how do they feel about it? Are they going to be upset when we change it? Like, all that's brand equity. And again, you got to be in tune with customers and stuff. Like, and it can't just be, oh, like, we're known for a quality product, so obviously we have brand equity. Um, it's like you can have a quality product and people don't even know your product's in the building. Like, we've seen that plenty of times.
Yep.
So again, it comes back to like the measurable things. And for me, all this is like there's certain people that find their way into the public spotlight, and people try to like overanalyze what the strategy is and stuff. They don't have a strategy. They're just doing what they want to do because they can, and they enjoy it. Um, so I know a lot of people are going to be, Twitter was still valuable for some people out there, and um, Twitter's done. It's gone. Um, but there will be others that take its place. It's not going to be X. Like, X is not going to replace the old Twitter in any way. It's like people need to think of it as a different product, as a different experience. Um, so
Speaking of people trying to replace it, Zuckerberg's Threads, that is an Instagram sister app, launched 2-3 weeks ago and shot up to 150 million users. After a couple of weeks, sentiment was it wasn't ready. And you would think that a perfect storm of what Elon's doing with Twitter right now, Threads has the perfect opportunity to swoop in and capture this audience that is looking for a new home. But what Mark Zuckerberg presented was a text version of Instagram with no ads, so people rejoiced. But it shows you that given that Meta's main business is ads, the product is not complete. And when you dig under the surface, you realize all the little quality of life features that the modern text-based social media user expects is not there. Also, the people who use Twitter don't want to be on Threads because they're not on Instagram, they're on Twitter. And now the Instagram crowd is on Threads. And these are not the same crowds.
Oh, man. They are not.
They are not the same crowds. So it looks like the text-based social media app, and I know Blue Sky and Mastodon are playing their own little playground, but I do feel, even with all the problems and all the brand equity lost and all the people crying about that the bird is dead, they're still crying about it on X. And this is a scary situation because with everything that's happened and people are still using X, in fact, the user base has doubled. Not the revenue of the company. In fact, the revenue is crashing, but the user base has doubled. What do you think about that?
Doubled since when?
Since the acquisition.
Since Elon acquired Twitter,
Yes.
the user base has doubled.
Yes, and I can look for stats, but that's the fact that more people are using this, whatever this new platform is going to shape up to be, to cry that the old platform is gone while costing Elon billions. Interesting times.
Billions of money, like
Yes.
cash, right?
Cash. Yes.
But the doubling, I mean, how many users? They were over like, were they like to a billion?
So as far as Twitter users, I think they hovered around 200 million.
Is that
Sorry,
like
20,
daily
20.
active?
So that's an interesting distinction. I think it's worth. So it's not daily active users. It's
Registered accounts.
yes.
And it's what? How many is
It
it?
used to be 280. Now it's 500 and something. But again, advertisers have fled. Revenue has gone away. Nobody wants to advertise there. Twitter Blue has been a very bad experiment, especially with brands and verification. And it all goes back to you had a brand that wasn't making all of the money, but it worked and was generating some revenue. You had a vision. You threw out the old branding. You threw out the old product. You brought in a new product with a new branding, presented it to the market, and now the market is rejecting it as far as revenue goes.
As far as
But everybody
revenue,
is here for the party to watch you sink billions of cash.
and that's why it's always important to ask what the goal is when doing any campaign. And I guarantee he doesn't care about the revenue. And how powerful is it? I didn't, man. If it doubled the user base, that had to be better than he expected. Because now, like, he's had this vision forever, and it's like the last piece of the puzzle, like a bunch of users. And now he's got over 500 million. Like, that's a win for
accounts.
him.
Yeah.
Like, that's a win for him. Like, because the rest of it will come. I mean, like Threads, none of these things have ads when they first get started, and
Correct.
then that's where
they have all the ads.
right?
Yeah.
It's the same model over and over. He's
Yes.
just getting to start out with 500 million users. Like,
correct. But the advertisers are running away.
Right. He's okay if it goes down to zero, because now he's just starting from scratch. He is a startup with 500 million users to start with, and it's a playground. He's going to experiment like crazy, and he's going to get super real relevant data like very quickly. And I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what the outcome is, but this is where, like, evil or not, there is genius at play here.
The way I feel about it is the same way I feel about all the marketers on LinkedIn that are using the Barbie movie as a way to extract lessons for, the average Joe marketer. The lesson is ask your CFO for $100 million, and then you can get to do all of these amazing tactics. But people skip over that. And I feel Elon's plan is have, $40 billion, and then you get to masquerade this new platform as a startup with with 580 million users.
Right?
Yeah. So if we're tying it back to our industrial companies here, we talked about companies that have an established brand, but for companies that do not have an established brand, I think some important questions need to be asked is, do you have a way to learn what your ideal customer profile thinks of your company right now? And do those impressions align with your idea of your own brand? And if they don't, are you ready to relinquish your idea in the favor of your ICP's idea of you? I'm interested in hearing your thoughts about this.
That's a tough mirror to look into, for sure. Um, and ultimately, that's what holds a lot of companies back. Like, they don't want to believe what the customers are saying. They want to believe in their vision and how they think. Sometimes the leaders aren't even aligned with the people underneath them. Like, the people in the day to day know that different stuff is happening than what the leader, you know, had envisioned. So, but it is the right question to ask. It's like, it's who gets to decide what the brand is, right?
Yes.
It's
And
not.
and to mirror what Elon is doing, Twitter in the eyes of everybody was the town square of the internet. But he believes the vision of this product is the everything app.
Well, I mean, town squares have some banking in them now, not just people talking to each other
Yeah.
as street performers. You know, uh, I don't know. We're A lot remains to be seen, um, and that's like, even like trying to see like how little strategy there is. Like, I mean, knowing how strong the branding is, like putting a lot of thought into what the X looks like when maybe he knows that people are just going to put the old logo back into their phone, right? And they're just going to hang on to that for dear life. I'm sure there's other things behind it, but that's where it's like, again, the logo is just one piece of the puzzle. Maybe you
Of
don't
course.
choose an X and then like erect a huge X at the top of your building, but that's the things like easy to miss or easy not to think about when you're so inwardly focused on what you want as an owner, right? He's not thinking about what anybody else cares about any of this as he, finishes off his empire.
So for Elon, rejecting the what people think of his brand netted him doubling his users. What about the industrial manufacturers that do the same? What is their fate?
What is their what?
What is their fate? Like if they decide that their view of the brand is the right one, and they reject how their ICP looks at their brand.
I mean, you're certainly risking your customers because if you get into that argument, and this is where specifications and regulation plays a role, in some industrial companies like are in a sweet spot where you're in a government contract, you're in a sweet contract, you know you don't have to worry about some of this stuff, right? Because it's not about the logo, it's about the product that's in the field that lasts forever, right? But you're opening yourself up, like, for somebody to open the door, and it only takes one. It really, like, only takes one bad experience, one competitor that hits the right mark at the right time, especially in these organizations that are, less than 50 million with maybe one or two big customers. Like, I mean, yeah, there's lots of case studies. Like, even bigger companies that aren't around anymore that were perennial, you know, blue chip stocks, like that are just gone, like because they didn't move the right way. They didn't move anyway.
So I think the takeaway here, if you reject what your ICP thinks of you, somebody else will come and give it to them and win.
It will have an impact at some point. Yes, because somebody else is listening. And sometimes it's the person in your organization that goes and starts a company to serve exactly how the customer is asking. Sometimes it's a customer that knows that there's this opportunity that will start, their own business.
You bring up an interesting point because a lot of the industrial companies that I've had the pleasure to work with, most of them are started by the lead engineer that left the company and thought he could do the business better, or the lead scientist, or someone who has the expertise of the product, believing that they can sell the product better or manufacture the product better, or they thought that they could provide a better customer experience for the customer base and decided to go on their own and venture to try to solve the same problem. And those are your most dangerous competitors, because they not only know the product, they not only know the customer base, but they know how you operate, and they know where are your gaps. They can come in and fill them. It's just an interesting tidbit for industrial that I've observed over the years.
Yeah. And your non-compete doesn't go as far as you think it does.
Yep. Because they need to ramp up anyway. Ramp up production. Ramp up their operation.
And it's, comes back to employee experience, which I'm sure we'll be hitting in a future episode.
Yep. An update on what I'm doing here. I have built 8 coal power plants, and similar to real life power plants, coal power plants boil water using coal. So what we did was feed coal to all of the 8 power plants, and now I'm piping the water. When you first started this game, how did you feel about it?
Oh, I knew it was going to be fun. I'm a big fan of games like No Man's Sky. You're just kind of just going around, gathering resources, building stuff. But there's a little more purpose in this game. This is not as sandboxy. So, no, it's a fun one. And definitely, like, the industrial relevance is fun for me to think about, too.
I'm sure once our audience grows, anyone who's interested in this game, I feel might be a good idea to find a way to have an interactive experience in the game together. Whoop, I fell. All right. So,
Like, what do we build next?
I was thinking something simpler, like them joining our game, because I'm sure a lot of people either are familiar with it or would be interested to try it, and it's just fun being in somebody else's factory, I guess. So let me.
It's like we could give away like free versions of the game. People
Yeah.
that want to try it.
So let me ask you this: is there anything grinding your gears this week or no?
Oh, every week. The less so um, recently. So I've had more time on my hands. Uh, all this, just stop taking your customers for granted. Like, please. Like, all of this stems from the lack of awareness of what you're putting your customers through, internally and externally. So just take 5 seconds to listen and don't try to qualify it away. Like, it's not because the industry is, you know, trying to rally around this cause. Like, it's just real feedback that we don't like the way you're not matching our expectations anymore. You're not doing this for me. It used to be great. Now you're not. And if you don't listen to me, I'm not going to be around forever. I might not be telling you that directly because I don't have any other good options right now. But as soon as I do, I'm looking. I'm always looking because this experience sucks right now. And if you keep taking me for granted as a customer, I will not be around forever. And it's that, taking customers for granted. We've worked this way for 50 years, so why do we need to change now? Just stop doing that. It's just, the change is all around us. And if you can't accept it and you think nobody else is going to, expect you to change, you got another thing coming. So just stop taking your customers for granted, please.
But we know better.
I'm never going to stop trying.
Yeah. I need your help. Kid, you take out some trees for me? Mr. Chainsaw
Yes. That's all I've been doing in the background.
We're very close to getting our first coal power plant online.
Oh, that's exciting.
All we need to do is set up a backup biomass burner to kickstart it. Same way you would use a battery to kickstart a genset.
Which tree? Did I get it?
Did you clear the corridor? Yeah, you got all of them.
So are you gonna make more platforms?
No, we're. You know what? Yeah, aesthetics. Here we go.
Oh yeah, like floating coal generators.
Yeah.
Oh boy, no.
So, after we get this up and running, so me and you, we're avid consumers of content. I know as marketers that doesn't seem like a surprise. Everybody around us who's a marketer is also an avid consumer of content. I more so consume social media content from other marketers on LinkedIn. Chris, you're more of a book/podcast learning kind of guy, right?
That's correct.
So, is there any podcast/book that you've read recently and would love to share and talk about?
Well, the marketing book podcast is my go-to week to week, and it's literally like changed my life.
That's kind of cheating. It's both a podcast and a book club.
I know, that's where it's like changed my life very quickly, because back in 2016 and before, because I like ran a lot, I ran a marathon, and I was always listening to, usually EDM of some sort, and like I'm so mad that I didn't discover podcasts and audiobooks before that. Because now I like go out for a run or a walk just so I can listen to stuff sometimes. But yeah, that's the Marketing Book Podcast. It's like, so every Friday releases, and this Friday is an interview with um, the human experience, I believe it was. Let me look that up real quick. Um, but just another book, and I think more and more books and podcasts and consulting content has been moving this way. Like, it's the experience. Yeah, it's The Human Experience by John Sills. How to make life better for your customers and create a more successful organization. So again, it's this dynamic of you're trying to serve a customer experience, but who's doing that? It's your internal customers. If you're not taking care of your internal customers, they cannot provide the experience you want to external customers. So it was a good uh, podcast, and timely, given my renewed focus on this topic. Uh, and yeah, I don't miss a week. It's not always, it's called the Marketing Book Podcast, but it's he's got sales topics, leadership topics, because really well-rounded marketers need to be understanding of all these different things. Um, and it's a podcast interview of a book author. So naturally, there's a book, and if it's available in audio, and I like the interview, I'm gonna pick it up. So it was good. And then, you know, another thing I just listened to is Song of Significance by um, help me out here.
Sorry.
Seth Godin. Seth Godin.
Seth Godin, okay.
And oh man, this is powerful stuff. Like, I definitely recommend you listen. It's about just how we create better organizations. Like, and he's countering the industrial mindset, like, of productive, efficiency. Like, how do we create organizations where everybody feels like they're doing significant things, like they matter, there's purpose, and it's not about management, it's about leadership, right? And the difference between those two things, how to empower people. It was just really good to listen to, and I highly recommend it.
Do you have biomass? Because we're ready to do an inauguration.
Uh-oh. Do I have biomass? I do. That's what I've been doing on the side over here. How much do you need? Probably need 200.
We need 3 stacks to put in one of each biomass burner here. Our little generator starter operation here.
All right.
Once that's online, then we can forget a bit about going and harvesting biomass to generate electricity, and we can start polluting this lovely planet that we landed on. In fact, a funny part of the story is that we were coming here and exploiting the resources of this planet in a very unsustainable way, and there's missing elements of renewable energy, and when you talk to the developers, they say this is on purpose. We're not here to do solar power or water power. We're here to pillage and plunder the resources while doing the most damage as possible. So you're going to see once these coal generators start running, that's a nice long pillar of smoke that's gonna start coming out.
All right, I want to make sure I get a good look at this.
Yeah.
So,
Did you? Yeah. Just put a stack in each, and then we'll turn on the breaker.
all right. So some there. 3 stacks of high society coming up. You ever see the movie Rounders?
I have not.
Mm,
Got to do some movie watch parties, I guess.
it's a good one.
Are you ready?
Where's the smoke going to be coming from? Yeah, just
From the
right here.
smokestack. Right there.
Okay,
Are you ready?
I'm ready. Yep.
Is it working? Did I
I'm
do
ready.
it correctly?
I hear something.
Did I mess up my calculations? I think the missing piece is that there's no coal coming, for the coal generator.
Important.
Yeah. And I guess it's as simple as connecting this power line. But what I want to do is, connecting this power line. You want to go ride with the coal?
Yes, I do. Maybe I should put this chainsaw down.
Let's make sure that this is working as intended.
So many moving parts here.
Let's go. Coal's here. So our next step here would be to upgrade these belts from Mark 1 to Mark 2.
Indeed. It's going to be a little bit.
Once we get this running, we'll at least have some power being generated. And we can link it back to the main grid. Then we can get those reinforced plates running. All right.
How about content for you? You been consuming
Yes.
anything of interest besides X?
Yes. So I've been all over LinkedIn. I follow a lot of marketing leaders around different industries. I had some interesting posts that I wanted to highlight and see your take on them and see if we can get some discussion going. As you can see here, our friend Dave Gerhardt, who has been a successful CMO in multiple companies and has started building his own community, Exit 5. And Dave has this little gem. Nothing kills great website copy faster than the opinions of 5 cross-functional VPs. You must be able to ship without consensus in committees, otherwise you'll never get anything done. And I would like to think this has resonated because this has over 800 reactions, around 100 comments, and 19 reposts. I have feelings. What are yours?
So many feelings. He actually used the word 5, or he used the number 5?
Yes. I would like to give him the benefit of the doubt that that's a planned number.
Oh, right? So, uh, sales, marketing, service, operations, and leadership.
Could be.
Oh man, yeah, it's right on the money. Um,
And I guess for anyone who hasn't been on the production side of creative copy, the main obstacle that writers like me and you face is whenever we present any copy for feedback, we get feedback on the wrong things. We want feedback on general messaging. We get feedback on grammar, flow, creative choice of words, everything under the sun, but not the thing we're looking for. And I feel him saying we must be able to ship without consensus is something that I've never experienced ever. I've always been bound to these committees, these consensus committees, because wants to. Everybody thinks they can write. This is as simple as that. Everybody thinks they can write, and that might be a contentious statement, but there are a lot of people who are good at creating successful businesses. Doesn't mean you can write. You can be a great salesperson, but I've seen your emails. You're not a writer. So let me do the writing, give me feedback on the content, and let me ship, and we let the audience decide if it's good copy or not. If it's not good copy, people are not converting, then we have our metrics to test and iterate. But if we never ship, we never get that feedback. And this is from the constructive side. My destructive side is just let me do my job. I think you're muted.
just let me do what you hired me to do, right?
Exactly. Yes. And
And
I wanna look at what the feedback is and what the comments are, and I have a belief that you see everybody's commenting like this hits home.
yeah, this is
So I
another
think
one
we're
of those
preaching to the choir.
super obvious situations where I think it's less about everybody thinking they can write and more about everybody always having an opinion. And that's why, like, I don't go into engineering and tell them what designs to make. I might be able to look at something and throw an opinion their way. That doesn't mean they should listen to it, right? I'm not a trained engineer. So why would it, like, everybody has an opinion and everybody has an opinion on marketing. And it's because, like, it's the foundation of why marketing, has trouble executing in these environments. And it's obviously frustrating beyond belief. Um, but like you said, what matters is the opinion of the buyer, of the audience. And more often than not, the people with the opinions inside are not the target audience. They are not the target market. So you have to let go of the way certain words make you feel. And by the way, we're choosing those words because we know the customers are using those words. Like, and this is why you let us do our job. Like, we've done the research, we talk to customers. This is how you resonate with customers. Use the words they use. Use the emotions that they, resonate with. Create emotion for them. Don't dumb it down. Don't hold back. Right? And so when you do have five stakeholders, like it's dead. I mean, it does kill projects and it kills careers. Like it's very hard for somebody to get something done in that environment. And it's an environment that most other teams don't have to execute in. This is why I like to put it like in most of these organizations, like sales, engineering, operations, service, have like a 50-year head start on marketing, 70-year head start, 100-year head start. These organizations have never had to do marketing before. Trade shows, as they've been executed, are sales activities. They are not marketing. And now you try to do marketing for the first time, and you don't have the resources, you don't have the process, you don't have the infrastructure. So, and for some reason, everybody can have an impactful say versus how every other department, it's like, okay, that department's been working a certain way for 50 years. So, they can do their own thing. So it's frustrating and it resonates, you know.
I do agree with the career killing aspect. Countless marketers I know in smaller companies that have worked, especially in the industrial space, have struggled to put together a portfolio of work that they are proud to show because of this exactly. Because they're never able to ship. Because every piece of content takes 15 rounds of edits. And they're never able to have that giant body of work that, everybody looks for provable record of success. Like, you can't do that if you don't ship, if you don't test, if you don't iterate, and if you don't learn. And your skills don't improve because you're not going through those cycles. All you're going through is learning how to manage stakeholders that want to say in copywriting. In both copywriting and content writing. I believe copywriting, maybe sometimes you can get away with saying, no, let the ads professionals do their job. But with content, good luck. Everybody thinks they can put two words together and become content writers until it's time for them to actually post on LinkedIn on their own profiles. Then the writers need to step in. Right?
Right. And that's because everybody's used to live communication, synchronous communication, right? They have control over the message and they can spin it real time. Like you feel more comfortable using edgier language because you can explain it away depending on how the person reacts. But when you're not there for them when they're reacting and you don't know the target audience, it doesn't go as well. So instead of going in there, you just stay out of it. You don't do it. Or you stop other people from doing it because you're worried they're going to piss people off. And, again, that's a big part of the transition that these companies are having trouble making. Like going from synchronous communication to asynchronous. It's a completely different ballgame.
On that note, I need to ask you, have you thought about your central grid yet in the game? Because I realize you've been decentralized, which is a robust way to go because you have a little bit of microgrids there. But now we're ready for a full-blown grid. What's the plan here?
Well, let's take a look from the top, shall we?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do like marketing plans and strategy. Haven't done a whole lot of manufacturing power grid planning in my day. So I could learn a thing or two here.
So while you're taking a high-level overview of this lovely factory, I have another piece of content I want to share. Some people might know him, some might not, but most people are familiar with Databox. They're a company that provides dashboarding software. And Peter Caputa is the CEO. I will not read the whole post, but I will read the intro because it's the intro that got me to read the whole post and dive through all the comments. Peter says, defund your outbound business development team. That is a very incendiary statement because any organization that has been operating for more than 5 years has an outbound first model, right? Mostly. Let's say 10 years. Anyone who spun up a company in the last 10 years understands that inbound is where it's at. But I digress. Defund your outbound business development team. Fund a market research team. He goes about and says, typical outbound processes are focused on researching the prospect and pitching. Your company buys and builds a list. Your business development reps research the contact and the company so they can personalize a product pitch. The pitch is usually premature since the prospect isn't usually in the market for your company's product or hasn't prioritized fixing the problem your company solves yet. Plus, prospects are bombarded with pitches and just tune them out, so your BDRs, emails, and voicemails get ignored. Instead, your company should do market research. With market research, you're still building and buying a list, but your outreach is different. You're reaching out to prospects in order to learn from them. You start your outbound with a list of research topics and a goal of learning about that topic from your prospects. You engage them in conversations on topics related to things they already are doing or thinking of doing. Most prospects are willing to have this conversation because the fact that you're doing research demonstrates that you have expertise. I'm not going to go into the rest, but he's basically saying nobody wants to be sold. So defund your selling team. But if people see you reaching out to learn more about them and have them be the experts and tell you what about their expertise, then that conversation is an easier, risk for them. Like, yes, I'll give you time to tell you about myself, but I won't give you time to sell to me. What's your thoughts on this?
First, just minor correction. I don't think he's saying defund your selling team. Like outbound, I have to think it's more of the outbound, like outbound marketing, outbound prospecting, cold calling, that kind of stuff. And I hadn't thought about this before, but as you were talking about it this time, like I think there are moments like this where industrial companies, when they don't jump on every new tactic and strategy, right? Like they've been doing this better. They just don't have all the fancy terms for it. Like the trade show environment is one of the best ways to do market research in a condensed, efficient way. It's one of the best ways to learn about an industry, who's involved. Like obviously, like everybody's there with their game faces on, giving you their value props. Like you're intaking a lot, and it's a lot of market research done in one place. Otherwise you have industrial associations, and all these groups. That's where it's interesting. It's like they know how to do this stuff, but then when you try to transfer it online, like it's just, they start to miss it. But back to what he's saying, it is like it's instead of being outboundy, providing no value, saying, "Hey, can I talk about me real quick?" Like, no, I don't have time for that. Like, oh, would you have something to share with me that I might have valuable? You're interested in me? Like, yeah, we might have a conversation now. Like this is the whole concept of content-based networking, right? Like, hey, be on my
Right.
podcast so you can talk about, yourself, and now you have a platform, and like, just that aspect of content creation, people are much more engaged for that instead of being like, hey, come on my podcast and talk about my product and why we're awesome. Like, no. So I love it. I mean, the language is certainly interesting. Like defund as a word is an interesting word nowadays. But it's like we're constantly struggling to get people to understand what needs to be done, what the customers are asking for. It's basically stop paying for people to cold call me and start paying for people to research what I need. Like, it could be that simple again, but we got to try and find all these various ways to explain it. Um, so it's definitely an interesting thought.
Some more context is Databox is branching out into more market research tools. So does that change your opinion about this post?
I mean, good marketers infuse the message to everything that they're doing. Like there needs to be a purpose. You can't just be shouting into the void. I don't like cold calling. Right. So I would hope that, and again, this is, kudos to them by trying to create products that will actually do good and, push this in the right direction. Right. Serve the need. Like, because maybe this could have been a messaging thread from previously, but they're realizing that there's no good tools to do market research. Like it's hard for people to do more than cold calling, right? So how do we make it easier? So you know me, I'm gonna find the positive intent and silver lining behind everything. But from a
No, it's the right way to go about it. You
yeah,
educate first. You teach people how to go about their business, and then you offer tools that support that. I don't see anything wrong with that, but I do share the sentiment that the outbound process, as it stands, needs to change somehow because it's not is not working. And a lot of conversations around the sales side, especially in tech, everybody's talking about how reps are not hitting their quotas and how we can better help reps hit their quotas. And there's obviously some conversation around maybe the method itself is not feasible anymore. My next topic is near and dear to my heart. It's a post from Anthony Kanata, co-founder and CEO of Audience Plus. He says, I've referenced these examples for the past year. HubSpot acquired The Hustle. Salesforce announced Salesforce Plus. Pendo acquired Mind the Product. Outreach acquired Sales Hacker. MailChimp launched MailChimp Presents. But in the last 7 days alone, and that post came out 6 days ago, Zuora launched Zuora Plus. Lavender launched Lavender Land. Crossbeam launched Insider. Support Logic launched SX Live Library. All companies are becoming media companies, and it's happening faster than you think. And I think another example from around our sphere is Hockey Stack announcing the Flow, which is similar to these platforms. And someone who's very interested in content marketing, someone who believes that becoming number one resource in the industry starts with educating through content. I think these companies are finally catching up to the model that has been established by HubSpot for a long time, and I think it was the book by Joe Polizzi, The Killing Marketing. Uh, he references Red Bull, and I find Red Bull a very interesting brand because I cannot remember the last time I saw an ad from Red Bull trying to sell an energy drink. I cannot remember it, but I see Red Bull everywhere in motorsports, in extreme sports, everywhere where there is association with high energy and high octane action. Red Bull is there. And Red Bull is a content machine and spends so much on content. But that's on the consumer side. But what we're seeing here is I think a revolution in the B2B side where companies are catching on that content, and not just any content, owning the content yourself and putting it in one place that you control, that you can track, you can funnel people into, is the right way to move forward. Love your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it just makes so much sense. And again, this is where like the industrial reliance on trade shows is a hindrance. Because this is all about like you have a target market. You need them to learn about your business, about your product, about the way you do things, even when you get in the right mindset. And you need to hire people. You know, people want to know who you are as a business, the culture, the values, all that stuff. You have to be able to communicate that, convey your message, if you will. And using trade shows to do it, these previous mechanisms or industry publications, right? You don't own the audience. You got to pay to be there. You got to pay for the slot in the magazine. Like, and the amount of money that people pay for this stuff is just insane. Um, but you're paying for access to the audience. And now that is more important than ever. And once you figure out you can build that audience yourself, or in the cases of these acquisitions, they're buying audience when they do that too. They're buying media machines, and they're buying audience. You know, this takes us back to the Twitter move. He's buying attention. He's buying eyeballs. He's buying butts in seats. Once you have that, that is the most, valuable commodity right now, because human beings are the ones making decisions. And the model is as old as media, right? Like people, however people have educated themselves on the news of the day, like media companies built this model. And that's why, people talk about this, like the media company mindset, right? Like if you need to create content at scale, then you have to change the mindset. This is not a couple PDFs once a quarter. This is videos every day. And it is a lot of work, but it's not a complex system either. Like, what are we going to do with this podcast? We're going to repurpose the hell out of it. It's going to be clipped. It's going to be turned into
Transcribed.
text,
Yeah.
transcribed articles, uh, social media posts, and then that engine, the engagement we get from that creates more topics to talk about. And the power really comes when you get to engage the audience that you're creating, and they start creating content with you. And when you can start generating that media mechanism, like, because it's so much resource. Like, you're not a media company at the end of the day. Like, you've been building this other product for years. That's why companies like HubSpot just acquired And I even had that thought that I ran by like, some leadership executives in the past, like, hey, if you really bought into this, like, is there a media company or like a marketing agency that we could buy that has videographers and people that do video and just like ready-made marketing department instead of hiring it? Like, is that possible? Right? Instead of acquiring just to increase market share, which is mostly usually the only reason acquisitions happen.
I have a challenge to industrial leaders that think that this model is not for them or they don't have the budget to do so. Is audit your trade show budgets. And if you're hitting six figures for one show, then you have the budget to create at least one pillar piece of long form video content and repurpose that forever. Six figures can get you a producer and someone to edit your videos and transcribe them. It doesn't have to be internal, but you have the budget to contract that work out. Showrunner, producer, that's one person. And the services needed to produce the repurposing. There is no excuse. This is one point that this is the hill I die on. If you have six figures in trade show budget, you have the opportunity to do this. And if I had a mic to drop, I would drop it right now.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, and to watch trade shows literally get wiped off the face of the earth during COVID. And how many sales pipelines were affected by that? Not many.
To be fair, in the first month, maybe. But I think everybody recovered quickly and figured out how to move to an online selling experience. But after that, pipelines definitely recovered.
Right. I mean, just the trade shows, right, as
Yeah.
the main marketing and sales mechanism. Like the lead generation, let's just say the lead generation and pipeline generation that trade shows are supposed to provide. Gone for a year. Companies I knew of grew. Sales grew in that time. And this is like hundreds of thousands of dollars being saved, but also not being used in any other way. And then mid 2021, or now it was like 2022, end of 21 into 2022. It's like, okay, trade shows are back. Let's go.
Yep.
Like, and even
full force, might I add?
Yeah.
Full force.
Yeah, no hesitation. And what was interesting is that where I was at, even though I had the mission of digital and I had support for that, trade shows hit the schedule and they have deadlines. And deadlines that impact people that are going to the shows, salespeople, application engineers, scientists, and you can't not do that stuff. So even if it doesn't cost a lot, the resources needed to support the events will guaranteed take away from the digital stuff that you're trying to do. And the impact of that is never understood. And this isn't about trade shows not working. Like, because I'll say, like, I went to some shows as they were coming back and I was reminded of the value. And it was interesting because trade show attendance went down, but the people who were going were like guaranteed leads. if they stop by. Like the students, all the, the tire kickers and window shoppers were not there, right? So if people did show up, they were there for a reason, and it was to see you and talk about your product. But to do so, like if you have to choose, not having a digital presence is unacceptable, and you will never get to the experience that is expected of you. And I love the pushback that's like, oh, if we're not there, people are going to wonder what happened. They're going
Exactly.
to think we went out of business.
Yep.
And again, if they see you online every day, they're not going to wonder where you are, you know. And for years before COVID, all of the big shows were already starting to dwindle, and major companies were not going to these shows anymore because they understood the value was going away. They put effort into websites and digital. And there's so much to support that movement. And it's like that's when it's like, oh, it's okay for this huge company to do it because they're the market leader. Like how long are you gonna let them be the market leader, making the right decisions, and you're just gonna watch them do it, right? So yeah, it's it's a tough hill to climb.
It is. So, my next post is interesting. Uh, this is a post from Jacob Warren, VP of Marketing at WarTech, but the 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 value of this post is not what Jacob's bringing. He's analyzing a news which is Cisco is training 84,000 of its employees to become LinkedIn influencers. This is the first time, to my knowledge, that a big company like Cisco is putting the effort and understanding the value they have within their hands. 84,000 LinkedIn posts every day or every other day. Can you imagine that? To be fair, if you go through the comments, a lot of people are joking about like, yeah, you need 84,000 people to explain what Cisco's value proposition is. So like, but beyond that, beyond the funny jabs at Cisco, the fact that they're going all in and providing the training. They're not just saying, hey, we need to start posting on LinkedIn. Because I've heard it a lot. Like, hey, you need to start reposting the company's content on your personal profile. That is
Because
not
that has a
that
ton
is
of
not
value.
going to happen. And I challenge anyone saying that to think about when marketers ask salespeople to use systems that they never used before. The first question is, what's in it for me? And I think this is the same case. When a company comes and asks their employees, hey, boost our message, what's in it for the employee? And when the company comes in and invests the time and the money to give you the right tools to become not just someone who amplifies the company's message, but to become an influencer on your own, that benefits you in propping up your profile, positioning you as someone who's knowledgeable and credible, and that actually boosts your career. And at that scale, nobody's gonna miss you. If 100 or 1,000 of these employees were recruited by other companies, nobody's gonna miss that. But I do understand that if you're talking to your 10 employees and 5 of them get recruited because they become, respected and knowledgeable, I get that. That's scary. But what's stopping you from having the same attitude as our friend John Franco, co-founder of Gorilla 76? who says if they get recruited because of their LinkedIn presence, then they outgrew our company. We failed to provide the environment for them to flourish. Somebody else did. And I love that. Shout out to John Franco. But I love that. You empower your people to become thought leaders in their space. You gain from the impressions that they're generating and the added benefit to the employee that advances their career. That might be a risk to the company, but you know the adage that gets thrown around of if I train my employees, they'll leave. And then someone comes back and says, well, what if you don't train them and they stay?
Exactly. It's yeah.
But I would like to scroll back up to Jacob's analysis. He's talking about that you're throwing away 100,000 impressions. I think that's very conservative. If you manage to get 84,000 people to post, that's not 100,000 impressions. We're talking millions of impressions.
So he's saying throwing away by not doing it?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and that's where I was gonna go. Like, and this is like we're competing. Like if we're marketers and we're suggesting this as a course of action, right? Versus the old days of Marcom and PR, right? So you put out a press release, you go to a show. You go to the industry event, right? You put an ad in the magazine. We're talking thousands of impressions, maybe. Like, I mean, even huge companies that have like 1 million followers on LinkedIn, like they're so bad at executing their company page that like, you know, you're posting in front of 1 million people each time, and there's single digit comments if you're lucky. Sometimes there's no comments, and like, you know, 50 people liking the post, most of them from the organization. So thousands of impressions is what you used to be able to get, and you had to pay a pretty penny to get it. You still do. Versus all the people that work for you. So 84,000 people. At minimum, let's say they didn't have a LinkedIn profile and they're just creating one for the first time. At minimum, 100 impressions for their post. That's almost 1 million impressions. and yes, people you care about are on LinkedIn to see those posts. It's not that the game of our people that we're targeting are on LinkedIn, so there's nobody to impress there. Like, yes, they are. There's 1 billion people on LinkedIn now. Like, and every industry is represented. This is exposure. This is public relations. This is the reach that you want.
And the benchmarks from LinkedIn have been updated. They used to say that 1% of the user base creates content. Now it's 5%. But that's still 5%. That's nothing.
Right.
There is space for you and your employees to occupy the feed. Especially now with LinkedIn bucking the trend of all social media and optimizing for like pure impressions, they're now urging people to bring expertise to the platform. If you can get 84,000 people to bring expertise that aligns with what your company is trying to achieve, LinkedIn is going to grab that and run with it.
And man, if people could just appreciate LinkedIn for what it is, like It's the best sales contact phone book like ever created, the best sales database. It is a social platform that is designed for business, and you don't see kids profiles, you don't see couples profiles. It's very hard for religious and political content to gain any kind of steam. It has its moments and its corners, but that's the beauty of the algorithm. Like it supports learning and networking versus outrage and like stuff that doesn't matter. And
In fact, LinkedIn's editor-in-chief recently got on a podcast and talked about how they view viral content internally. And he said that viral content gets manually reviewed and they look under the hood of what signals got it to go viral. And they update the algorithm to make sure that content like that doesn't go viral. For them, they don't want, the top 1% of creators creating the bulk of the views. They want everybody to feel empowered to share a piece of their knowledge. They want this to become the place where micro communities convene around thought leadership and education. But a huge part of my learning and my career progress was because of LinkedIn and because of marketers sharing their experience for free, sharing good, actionable experience for free. And I have become a customer of some of these. The content that Mary Q and Gorilla and John and Joe Sullivan like were a foundational pillar for my learning. And now, anytime I have the budget to engage with Gorilla 76, I jump at the opportunity. Can you have your software attribute their posts to my sale? No. But does it change the fact that if I have the budget, I will engage with Gorilla 76 without looking for alternatives? What's the value of that?
it's huge. I mean, my last two jobs, my relationship with you, uh, so many things I can source back to LinkedIn. It's just an amazing platform.
And not just simply
That
LinkedIn, but LinkedIn empowering experts to share their expertise for free to teach on the platform instead of focusing on lead gen.
right are focusing on how they generate ad revenue.
Yes.
When in the background they're generating a ton of ad revenue, but again, it's the HubSpot mindset, the inbound mindset, understanding that the rising tide raises all ships.
Yes.
And the more ships it raises, the more ad revenue you get. It's not about outrage. Like there's there's a good way to get eyeballs and a bad way. They're taking, some great approaches, and just that point of view on virality is amazing. It's completely counter to the business model of the other social media platforms,
Yes.
which is why I don't call LinkedIn a social media platform, right? There's social media and there's LinkedIn. Like that's always how I present it, and that's always how I'm gonna present it. Um,
Again, these last 30 minutes of conversations were based on posts shared by experts on LinkedIn. How many posts do we share with each other on our private DMs? How much posts have we shared in the past of saying, this is what we're talking about internally in an organization, and this is the person that is more eloquent than me and is explaining this, or has more credibility because they've successfully implemented it multiple times. Here's a video of them talking about this. It helps us in multiple ways. It helps us get through our daily jobs, clear challenges, get buy-in from people who maybe we didn't have the expertise to get buy-in from. It's just I can't stop singing praises of LinkedIn. In fact, I can argue that me being here in the U.S. right now is because of LinkedIn. Like all of, yeah, LinkedIn's the best. If you're not on LinkedIn, you're missing out. And if you're on LinkedIn, make sure to find both me and Chris and follow us. Send us a connection request. We'll love to chat.
For sure. And that last piece, like, you know, it's probably different for marketers just because there's, definitely a space on there where marketers are talking to marketers, and it's easy to get caught in the echo chamber. But like the access, like we're on here and we can say, hey, come connect with us on this platform. Like almost everybody who does a podcast, like book authors, like for me to be in a transitional space where I'm trying to figure out, what the next career move is, and being able to connect with book authors who I admire and, podcast hosts that I listen to every week, that's huge. And that kind of access, that's similar to being able to use, other platforms, or, being able to ring up like your favorite athlete, or, it's just awesome. The learning environment, the networking abilities, and to have them be sharing that knowledge and then also be available, to anyone who shows up, asking for the value that they promise, right? And hopefully providing some in return. It's awesome. And, the more I think about it, I forget what I was listening to recently. It might have been this last podcast, This Human Experience. But, Microsoft recently purchased LinkedIn. And the Microsoft leadership transition over the past few years, I don't know exactly how long it's been, but it's instilled a new set of values in that company, making it very human-centric and human-oriented. And I can see it throughout, a number of the products, some new, some old, just their approach. And the more I feel that, and the juxtaposition against, the Facebooks and Googles and X's of the world, right? It feels good that one of these behemoths is kind of sticking to their values on that, because they do have a lot of control over the online experience. So
On that note, if you're catching this on YouTube, we invite you to join us next time on stream, and we'll definitely start promoting this show even more. We'll be repurposing some of these clips on LinkedIn, and we will have these segments that we're talking about as individual clips on YouTube. But until then, any closing thoughts, Chris?
feels good to get this started, man. And we're gonna be here for the long haul. There's lots to talk about. It's gonna be a good time, and we look forward to engaging with people. And please share your thoughts open and often as you can. We want to build a community here around this, and talk about stuff that matters to people. So if we're not talking about stuff that matters, please let us know and, share your ideas on what does matter.
Let us know in the comments, either on YouTube or on LinkedIn. Make sure to follow us, both me at Salim-Malouf, Chris at Chris-Carolyn on LinkedIn. We're always available for a chat. And if we can't make the time, then we'll see you next time.